Hi everyone, and welcome to this video where we look at another member of my classic computer collection. And today's video, like many of the ones that I've done recently, is a remake. It's a look at this ugly old beast, the Osborne 1. It's not pretty, but it is a classic computer. So let's take a look at it. This is not an Osborne 1, but I want to take a moment to provide some context for those of you who might not know the market environment the Osborne 1 came into. The Osborne 1 was released in 1981. By this time, microcomputing had moved beyond the hobbyist stage, and the machines were becoming very useful devices. While some of the older computers still being sold, like the Apple II and the Atari 800, could claim a general purpose use, newer machines mainly targeted two markets. There was a home market, where cheap computers such as the Commodore VIC-20, the Tandy Color computer and the ZX81 were being made specifically to educate and entertain, and the other market was strictly for business. The invention of the electronic spreadsheet, starting with VisiCalc in 1979, was reason enough to get a computer for the business environment, although their ability to produce documents and process records like inventory and accounts was another big plus. These computers didn't need sound or graphics or colour, but they did need to be able to display a reasonable amount of information, have reliable and fast storage, preferably lots of it, and have a good full-stroke keyboard. Business computers tended to be large and heavy, and so chained to the desk. This could be a constraint to productivity. If you wanted to work on files after hours, it was a case of staying late at the office. If you're on the road and you wanted to make up some reports for clients or crunch some data, well, forget it. A problem is often an opportunity, and this opportunity was spotted by a man called Adam Osborne. Adam Osborne was British, but he was based in the USA, and he was well known in the microcomputer scene in the late 1970s and early 1980s. He was a publisher, a columnist, and an entrepreneur. He was outspoken and was never shy of giving his opinion of what was happening in the microcomputer industry and where it should be going. However, he was the sort of guy that put his money where his mouth was. He saw an opportunity, started a self-titled company, Osborne Computer Corporation, and came out with the Osborne 1. The Osborne 1 is notable in that it is regarded as the first commercially successful portable microcomputer. These days we would call it a luggable, as it was large, heavy, and you couldn't run it in your lap. You also needed to find a place to plug it in. Nevertheless, it was far more transportable than desktops of the time, and it started a whole new class of transportable business micros that lasted up to the late 1980s, when the true laptops came along. The Osborne 1 was strictly pitched at business, and it's reflected in this advertisement. This ad is actually just a subset of a full-page ad. It's bigger than this, but you can see the headline there with the main photo. The guy on the left doesn't stand a chance. So what it's saying is that our man on the left, a traditional businessman with his traditional dark suit and his traditional briefcase, belongs in the past. On the right, we have the new boy on the block. He's hip and he's modern, and he even has a lighter suit. He's cooler because he has all his spreadsheets and documents and all that computing power at his fingertips. He can change things on the go. He's the new man. The message is that if you are not up with the play by having one of these Osborne portable computers, then you really will be left in the dust. Here's another ad with a similar message. You have a woman there carrying an Osborne, bathed in an ethereal light, showing that she is moving into a better place, a kind of heavenly realm. There are a couple of other office workers there, reacting in awe of this person who has this dramatic new productivity tool, which is going to make everything that has gone before completely redundant. I just love these old ads. They play on the mystique that microcomputers had at that time. So let's have a look at the machine itself. So I'll just pick it up off screen and carry it to the table, and there it is. You can see it looks a little like a sewing machine case. It's actually quite heavy. I wouldn't like to carry this any long distance around a large airport. You just clip the bottom of the case off like that. That folds down to reveal a keyboard. So there you have a keyboard, a screen, a couple of drives, a fully working business computer. So let's have a close look at the faceplate. Starting on the right, we have a disk drive. This is the B drive. Usually this would be the one that people would use for data. Below that is a battery connector. It's on the right. It's an aftermarket battery, was made for the Osborne, but I don't think it was very common. There's a reset button. There's an external video plug. Normally there would just be a socket there, but I'll come back to that later in this video. There's a couple of brightness and contrast knobs. Then we have the tiny screen. It really is very small, being a mere 5 inches in size. I'll put a pin up there just to show you. I'll give you an idea of the scale. Quite tiny. Although the characters that you see on it are remarkably crisp, as you will see a little later on. But I don't think I'd like to be using a screen that size for any length of time. So over on the left we have the A drive, and this is the one normally used for the operating system and programs. And you notice a little bay under there to tuck your floppy disk. There's an equivalent bay on the other side. This was really handy for carrying your data with you. Then we have some connectors, so from right to left, a keyboard connector, parallel port, and 2 serial ports, one for a printer and the other for a modem. I'll just have a look at the keyboard. Standard business keyboard, full stroke. It's got a numeric keypad. It's not too bad to type on, although it does have a somewhat spongy feel to it. So let's check out the back. You can see that it actually looks quite attractive from that angle, as opposed to when you view it from the front. So let's swing it round. There's not much on the back because it is, of course, the top of the case, so there's a carry handle there for lugging the unit along. And under this flap here, there's a socket to plug your power cord, along with a fuse and a switch. You can also bundle up your cord and tuck it into that little pouch so you don't have it flapping around. Pulling out this little flap reveals some ventilation slots. This is all the ventilation the computer has, apart from a few gaps in the front, which is not a lot when you consider you've got 2 disk drives in there, you've got a main board, you've got a full computer generating heat. I have read reports of Osbornes overheating occasionally, and I can certainly see why. This picture of the Osborne Naked shows what an innovative design it was. It was designed by Lee Felsenstein, who was one of the original members of the Homebrew Computer Club, the same club Apple computers Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs attended. It's worth remembering that only large, clunky, full-height drives were available those days, and the challenge was to fit 2 of these into a case which could be carried. So Felsenstein nestled a small screen between the drives, put the main board underneath, and fitted a carry case around the whole arrangement. It was very innovative and not something that was easy to do in 1981. Here's the Naked main board. You can see a collection of 4 116 RAM chips on the right, giving 64K RAM. The processor, of course, is the Z80. Mainboard's quite easy to work on once you extract it from the machine, but it's a case of taking everything off. You've got to get rid of the case, then you have to take the drives off the screen and the PSU before you can work on it. My Osborne has a daughter board which enables the drives to write in double density. The original version of the Osborne came with only single density, and that's only about 80 kilobytes a disk, so double density was a desirable upgrade. You can see the daughter board here on the main board of another Osborne one I once owned. Now, making a 2-drive business computer portable was one innovation of the Osborne one, but there was another significant innovation. Prior to the Osborne one, if you were in the market for a business computer, you would go out, you'd select your business computer, that would cost you a certain amount of dollars, and then you would have to select the software. So you'd have to try and decide which software you wanted, pick and choose among the packages that were available, and pay the money. And sometimes the price of software was almost as much as the computer itself. What Osborne did with the Osborne One is that he bundled the software with the machine. So you only had to pay the one price, and you got all the productivity software you needed for your office environment. So you got word processor, you got database software, you got a spreadsheet, you got your language tools in case you want to write your own software. You got the whole gambit, or most of the software you'd ever want to use. This was really innovative. So you went out and you bought the Osborne One and you got the whole package. This one-stop shop solution was an important selling point and was one that competitors that came later copied. So let's see the machine at work. And what I've done is to use a combination of photos or video from a distance. That's the distance that the eyes would be at from the screen, and some close-up photos just so you can actually see what's on the screen, although even the close-up photos are a little less clear than the characters really are. They're actually very crisp. So we start here with the screen that you get when you turn the unit on, asking you to boot the machine. So I'll push return to boot it. I've got a operating system drive in the left drive there. So light goes on and it loads CP/M. CP/M was the standard operating system for 8-bit micros, but you don't get the CP/M prompt in an Osborne. You get this screen, which contains help menus. So here's a closer look at it. So you can see there's a number of letters that you can push to get help on various aspects of the machine. Very useful for a first-time user. So, for example, if we wanted to perhaps have a closer look at Wordstar, or wondering what Wordstar is, we haven't looked at the manual, and we want to find out how to use that, we just push the W. And there we have our Wordstar screen, which just gives a little bit of basic information about the package and how you might start to use it. Pushing return from there takes you back to the main menu. It's got some neat things. Pushing Z will give you a self-portrait of the Osborne One. So there it is, just using ASCII characters. It identifies the various bits and pieces of the computer. So it's a fairly comprehensive help system. Pressing escape from the help screen puts us into CP/M proper, and there we can see the A prompt. If we do a directory, we can see the CP/M files, and those of you that are familiar with CP/M will recognize those files. They're fairly typical ones in a CP/M distribution. And there's one specific to the Osborne as well. Now, most Osborne One users wouldn't need to get into CP/M at all. And that is because all of the disks that they would have got with the machine would have been self-booting. So you can just put a disk in, push return, and up would come your program. You didn't need to dabble with the DOS at all. Just to show you what I mean, we'll put the Wordstar disk in here, clip it down and push return to boot it. See the light going on there. Up we come with the Osborne logo. This is on all of the self-boot disks. And we're in Wordstar. And you'll see that the Osborne does use this dual contrast between characters and various pieces of the screen to highlight or low light various sections. So we'll open a file in Wordstar. I want to show you something specific to the Osborne, which is why I've opened this file, which is a document file, but it shows a calendar. Now this calendar is larger than the Osborne screen, and I can horizontally scroll it using the arrow keys. Most CP/M software of the day expected the computer to be able to display 80 columns across the screen. The Osborne could only display 52, which is why for some documents you needed to have the scrolling feature was there because the screen was simply too small to accommodate 80 columns comfortably, especially if you want people to actually read what was on the screen. Now I'll just show you both floppy disk drives in operation. I've written a very simple, basic program. It's one I wrote as a screensaver for the Osborne when I was testing it out. It's written in BASIC. I've called it the Matrix. It's a pretty lame piece of software and it doesn't really look like the Matrix screensaver, but there you go. So I'll just boot up BASIC and you can see there the splash screen message after we've got the software ready to go. So I'll load in my program, which is on the disk in the B drive. It's called Matrix. And the red light goes on and it's loaded. It's a very small program, so it doesn't take long to load. I'll just list it there so you can see what it looks like. Just a few lines. So now we'll run it. Got to seed it with a random number, as you did with some of the old machines when they were using old-fashioned Microsoft BASIC to get your randomization. And there you can see my Matrix screensaver. So in BASIC it worked on the Osborne 1. I have got the manual that Osborne sold with the machine, the user's reference guide. It's a pretty good manual. It's divided into two sections. First section is a true user's guide. It's a tutorial that sort of steps you through the various facets. So setting the machine up, and there's plenty of good diagrams there to show you what to do. Then it goes through all of the software. The bit there on how to care for disks, how to insert disks. Goes through the various software packages in a tutorial style, so it trains people to use the basics. And then the second half of the book is a reference section. So once you're sort of reasonably familiar with how to operate the machine and some of the software, there's a reference section there which you can use to refer to specific commands or specific attributes and things about the machine or the software. So there's the reference guide, beginning of the reference guide part, and we're now on to the more tutorial stuff towards the front. It's a pretty good manual. As I said, if you were an Osborne user, you were quite new to computers, reading through this manual would get you familiar with not only the machine, but all of the bundled software that you've got as well, and get you up and running. And once you're reasonably comfortable with that, you had the reference section to guide you in more advanced topics. Now there's just one other little bit of software I want to show you as we finish. I was lucky enough to get an Osborne 1 unit with one of these. This is the external video adapter, and I can just plug a cord into that and put it into a standard monitor, and this is what I see. The Osborne screen, except much bigger. So I imagine if you had an Osborne 1, this would be pretty desirable, because certainly it's much larger and much clearer. And I have heard that people used to use these monitor adapters and have the monitor actually sitting on top of the Osborne when they used it. Unfortunately, you still get only 52 columns, so it doesn't give you an 80 column screen, although there was a modification, I believe, which would enable you to do that, to turn your external display into 80 columns. But there you can see it, certainly quite viewable on a larger screen. So what are my final thoughts about the Osborne 1? Well, it's not a pretty machine to look at. Someone once described it as a cross between a World War II field radio and a shrunken instrument panel of a DC-3, and that's probably quite an accurate description. But to me, its Jurassic appearance is quite engaging. It looks utilitarian. It looks as if it's a serious machine for a serious task, which indeed it was. Over and above that, though, it started a whole new class of microcomputers. These were the portables, or the luggables as we'd call them these days. Not only did it start a whole line of computers in that vein, but also started a trend of bundling application software in with a computer so that you just paid the one price for the complete productivity tool. Unfortunately for Osborne, the very concept that he introduced with the Osborne 1 was picked up quickly by competitors like Kpro, and they came out with very similar machines, similar sorts of concepts, bundled software, except they had larger screens. Customers liked these larger screens, especially as they could show 80 columns, and this led to extremely hot competition and the Osborne Company's demise, bankruptcy, in 1983. Still, it's a classic computer which deserves its space in any computer collection.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that look at the Osborne 1. So until next time, keep well, and we'll see you in the next video.